Sorcerer Emperor Jahil, Third Three-Demon Yo Marshal Sui, Cornu, and lastly, Vega, who was supposed to have been sent to the end of time and space. Yes, it was a very impressive lineup. Jahil is the one who brought misfortune to Kagari and the others, and if you trace it back to its roots, you'll find that he is the one who summoned Guy, the fool who is unparalleled in the world. It was said that he possessed incredible power, but he had just been defeated by Yuoki. To be able to come back to life already shows how strong your bad luck is. According to reports, Cornu was supposed to have been turned to charcoal by Velgrind. I don't know the details, but I've heard that they lived up to their name as an aggressor species, destroying numerous other dimensional worlds and bringing them under their control. I don't really have any personal experience with this, but it definitely seems like a hassle. Speaking of troublesome, there's Vega. Seriously persistent. I should have buried him for sure. Seal Sand seems to be in a bad mood, but now that I think about it, he did say that he jumped to the end of time and space. What exactly is he talking about? Could it be that the person who had the accident when he came back here was? It's a minor matter, so there's nothing to worry about. Is that so? That's fine then. Well, never mind about Vega. The bigger problem was that Veldonava had even brought Jahil back to life. Cornu was originally a subordinate, so it's not surprising that he brought her back to life. However, Jahil had done some pretty cruel things to Milim. The reason Milim became the demon lord was because she was caught up in Jahil's desires. To bring such a villain back to life and use him for his own purposes is to seem completely insane. This was the best evidence that Veldonava was out of control. Benimaru, please continue to be in overall command. However, if necessary, I will authorize you to take part in combat. Got it. My energy is almost back, so I can fight too. Despite the situation, Benimaru laughed fearlessly. As always, he was very reliable. That being said, Benimaru is in charge, so the actual work will be left to someone else. He will stay in the background and help out if anything happens. Diablo, can you stop them? If that's your order, I'll be happy to. It was a rather unreasonable request, but Diablo gladly accepted. I feel a little sorry for him, as his body must be in tatters by now, but if he doesn't try his best now, the world will end. Thank you. With that, I entrusted the important task to Diablo. Diablo then gave Feldway a look of exhaustion, fatigue, toil, trouble, distress, exhaustion, and dismay. You should at least clean up after what you did with your own hands. Diablo said this as he tried to take Feldway away. No matter how you look at it, he still had the intention of using her. It seems like that person is dying. That's what I thought, but I didn't say anything. I cheered him on in my mind, saying, "Do your best," and left the rest to Diablo. Zalario watched Feldway being led away with a complicated look on his face. He seemed to be struggling with what the best course of action would be for him. Still, the conclusion is that he's staying here. He may be planning to witness the battle between me and Veldonava with his own eyes. Dino, Pico, and Gracia all seem to be devoting themselves to watching and observing alongside Zalario. In Dino's case, it's possible that he was simply slacking of, but that's better left unsaid. At the very least, the wounds he received from Veldonava hadn't fully healed, so he decided to let it go this time. Compared to Dino and the others, my 3 demon girls are full of fighting spirit. Of course, we will also participate. Of course. My lord, next time I will completely shatter their souls, so they will never be able to revive. Led by Tensura, they all seemed to have no intention of retreating. They were clearly exhausted, but perhaps because they had drunk my special recovery potion, they seemed full of energy. It would be rude to stop him, so I decided to leave it to him. Don't do anything reckless. I understand. Leave it to me. The word reckless doesn't exist in my dictionary. Please leave it to me without worry. Testarossa nodded gracefully, Ultima energetically, and Carrara nodded a little. Dangerously. By the way, I think the dictionary Carrara has is defective, so I plan to give her a properly revised edition later. Masayuki stood next to the 3 demon girls as they knelt. Demon Lord Rimuru, I'll cooperate. That bastard Jahil smells fishy. I think he might have something to do with the terrorist act that took my sister. It wasn't Masayuki. This aggressive personality is Rudra. Rudra was saying something ominous. So, doesn't that mean that you brought back to life the person who killed your wife and yourself? This is just speculation, but the sen of desire is similar. A long time ago, the king of a small country met me, and he had eyes filled with ambition, just like yours. Could that king have been the perpetrator of the terrorist act? Yes, that's right. It feels almost certain. He was killed by Guy and his friends, then reincarnated and killed Lucia and Veldonava. When Dino found out about this, he was subjugated. Afterwards, he was reincarnated once again as the great sorcerer Emperor Jahil. After that, he committed all sorts of atrocities and attempted to take advantage of the orphaned Milim, causing a great disaster. It has always been a mystery how such a villain could be born. With a guy like Jahil, there's no room for leniency. I could be serious without any hesitation, or so I thought. That's trash beyond imagination. No doubt about it. This time I'll make sure to settle things properly. Well then, I guess I'll just cheer you on. The one who quietly joined my conversation with Rudra was Yuki, who had somehow arrived using teleportation. It seemed that Yuki had also come after sensing Jahil's revival, but he wasn't the type to suddenly launch an attack. He seemed to have carefully listened to our conversation before deciding where he wanted to stand. If you can nullify his abilities and skills with your authority, could you please do your best as his support? Of course, Rimuru-san. The way he winked at me at this point showed how bold Yuki was. It may sound good to say that he was relaxed, but it was a fine line between that and insensitivity. In any case, at this point, a reliable helper named Rudra appeared. By the way, what happened to Masayuki himself? Sometimes I feel like she looks at me with dead eyes, pleading for help, but I'm sure that's just my imagination. It seemed Velgrind would cooperate, so he decided to temporarily separate the people Veldonava had brought back to life from his consciousness. I faced Veldonava. It's a one-on-one situation. I'm not really feeling it, but this is where I need to put in the effort. Now then, if you really want to destroy the world, I'll do everything in my power to stop you. When I declared that, Veldonava gave a thin smile. The life form I created has now come to defy the will of its creator so clearly. I am overwhelmed with emotion. Perhaps you could achieve the feat of killing a god. I don't have any intention of killing you. You are Milim's father, and there are still people who adore you. I'll beat you up until you come to your senses and wake you up. Ha ha ha, that's interesting. If you can't do it, the world will just be destroyed, so don't worry, just give it a try. Well then, I'll take you up on your offer. I drew my sword and slashed at Veldonava. The dragon Ryumama Tutu that Kurobi had forged was a straight sword with a distinctive black blade, or so he remembered, but it had completely changed. The black blade had a beautiful rainbow-colored blade pattern that shone even without any magical power being channeled into it. He attacked with a sword-drawing technique, and I realized it just now. I was surprised, but the amazing part started from here. Veldonava showed composure as he blocked the blow with a sword that had been materialized using his own fighting spirit, but just as he thought this, the sword was cut through as easily as butter. It was the moment when my dragon magic ma sword too showed off its incredible sharpness. Unfortunately, Veldonava reacted instantly and used teleportation to dodge the attack before it could be slashed by the sword. I didn't think it would end like this, so I guess that's how it is. However, the good news was that my sword was extremely powerful. It's been a while since I've been truly surprised. That sword wasn't made by me, but it has hidden power equivalent to a Genesis-class sword. Genesis class, well, I don't know much about it, but there's no doubt that it's an amazing sword. My proud companion forged it. And it's like a sword that's like an extension of me. I didn't mind being praised, so I answered honestly. Kurobi would also be happy to hear that Veldonava praised him. Genesis class is not something that can be created by human hands, but there's no point in saying that. In fact, what you have in your hands is the real thing. Veldonava said this with a self-deprecating look on his face. Outside of matters related to Lucia, he seems surprisingly not to be stubborn. Veldonava quietly clasped his hands together. I will use my own sword to counter yours. It seems that it is not an embodiment of fighting spirit, but a genuine beloved sword. Although I had no obligation to wait, the best thing to do was to bring Veldonava back to his senses, so I decided to watch over him quietly. I'm not the type to play fair and square, and I think it's a bad move if I want to win. But my true feelings are that I want to wait for Guy and the others to come and help me. Judging from the overall situation, I think it would be fine to wait long. Enough for them to pick up their weapons. As he was thinking this and observing the situation, a spark appeared between Veldonava's hands. The divine sword returns. Veldonava whispered, and as if responding to his voice, a sword appeared. A sparkling, bubble-like glow decorates the blade. The image that comes to mind is that of Ramyun. It was a mysterious sword with bubbles rising up on the blade, then popping and disappearing. Sorry to keep you waiting. The name of this sword is Memory. It is the 8th Genesis class sword I created after I was revived, and all the events that have occurred in the 3,000 worlds, including this pivotal world, are engraved into this sword as a clear record. When I heard that, I almost interjected, "Is this the Akashic records?" The reason I didn't say it was because I realized that it was probably true. Besides, I felt like we no longer had the time to have that kind of conversation. An intimidating presence that seemed comparable to that of a dragon kind was emanating from Veldonava's sword Memory. This won't break my sword, right? Is everything okay? That's fine then. Well, if a sword breaks, it's proof that your skill and level are immature. Hakuryu had told me this story so many times during his training that it was getting to be annoying. Losing a weapon on the battlefield means death. To prevent this from happening, you must not only take care of your weapon on a regular basis, but also be careful about how you handle it. To avoid putting strain on the weapon, always protect the blade with fighting spirit and aura. So, what is the name of your sword? What's the name of my sword? They call it Dragon Ryu Demon Ma Sword too, but those certainly aren't names. That's right, since it's a good opportunity. The name of this sword is Hope, Elpis. He gave the sword a name and declared it. At that moment, I felt like I was hit by a slight feeling of fatigue, but I recovered in an instant, so maybe it was just my imagination. I'm in perfect health, so I don't think there's any problem. Isn't that right? To me, it felt similar to the fatigue that comes from nomming things, but nomming my beloved sword shouldn't have any effect. Seal said it's no problem, so I'm probably mistaken. Anyway, the name of my sword has been decided to be Hope or Elpis, the hope that the world will not end, or rather, the hope that everything will go well, which also includes the desire and wish. I'm greedy, after all. I put a lot of meaning into the name Hope and Elpis. Hope Elpies, that's a nice name. Yes, thank you. When I replied, Veldonava laughed lightly. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, Well then, let's get started and see how far we can follow God's providence. Those words were the signal. The sword dance begins. With Veldonava and I's swords, Ken halberds, we created a space of isolation that cut apart anything that came into contact with the surrounding area. Retreat, evacuate. Don't come near me, you'll die. No one is optimistic that Ruminas will bring them back to life, even if they die. Everyone kept their distance from us and protected themselves. That's fine, I thought. Even Benimaru kept a little distance. If an ordinary person, even if everyone here was a hero class, were caught up in it, it seemed that there was no other outcome than instant death. In this life-or-death situation, where there was no room for anyone else to intervene, I put all my energy into my deadly sword, which would cut through both of our barriers in a single blow, and clashed with Veldonava. Ivalage rose unsteadily to his feet, engulfed in the current of various emotions. Guy remained on guard. Those who are recognized by both themselves and others as the best in this world. Each unleashed their greatest and most powerful attacks. It was a miracle that Ivalage was still alive after receiving a direct hit from them. And yet, it's frightening that he still stands up calmly. That was not the case. Ivalage emitted light in all directions. At first glance, it appears to be a desperate attack. But that's not the case. It was a destructive ray that was incomparably more powerful than anything that had come before. As proof of this, the outer wall of the ground floor of Tensukkaku has crumbled away. One reason for this was probably Guy's catastrophe eclipse, which had caused an abnormality in the indestructible attribute, but it was a shock that overturned common sense, sending shivers down the minds of those who saw it. Several floors of Tensukkaku had disappeared. The upper part is connected to the sky, so it appears to be hanging from the sky. The giants who lived in the area were gazing up at the Tensukkaku in amazement. The tower we must protect. The Tensukkaku, a symbol of immortality since ancient times, has collapsed. I look up at the sky, unable to believe it, unable to want to believe it. Guy and the others had no time for that. Having been hit by Ivarid's destructive ray, which had enough power to destroy the Tensukkaku, there was no way he could afford to remain stunned. Or rather than being stunned, it was desolate. You bastard, take this more seriously. I'm doing my best. Guy yelled at Veldora. Veldora is excellent at attacking, but not so good at defending. In the first place, he had a strong body that was immune to most attacks, so he didn't need to worry about defense. That's why Veldora tried to assert that he was doing his best, but Veldora-chan, are you going to defy Guy? Aren't you being too favorite, despite pitying, obnoxious, obsessed? Is there a problem? No, nothing. Velzard interrupted, and she fell silent. A sad balance of power had been established, as if no younger brother could defy his older sister. Incidentally, Velgrand quickly gave up, cancelled her separate body, soul body tie, and reunited with her main body. Her brilliant fighting style was so impressive that it could be included in a textbook. Perhaps it was better for Veldora that he didn't have to be blamed by his two sisters. Even so, it was clear that Veldora looked pitiful. Veldora was troubled and decided to change the direction of his attack. Putting me aside, isn't Milim also not being serious? He had put himself aside and was trying to point his finger at Milim. Milim objected to this. What are you talking about? I always give it my all. What are you saying? You were far more violent and powerful when I was trying to stop you. Well, that was true. I'm not slacking of. Milim argued, feeling disappointed, but as Veldora had said, there was no doubt that her power was overwhelmingly weaker than when she was in her Stampede Madness state. That's because Milim isn't using Wrathful King Satanale. Guy pointed that out. Ahem. Milim was shaken, and her eyes wandered. When he went berserk, he lost all sense of reason and, driven by rage, activated the full power of Wrathful King Satanale. However, now that he was calm, he could not bring himself to casually use a power that could destroy the world. Well, to begin with, that power is so dangerous that even I might not be able to control it. Hearing this, Veldora also looked troubled. It would be like poking a snake in a bush, and it would be unbearable if Milim started going out of control again. That's a problem, Veldora thought. However, Guy had a different idea. He believed that Milim could at least control her own powers. In Guy's case, when he recreated Milim's Wrathful King Satanale with his own Prideful King Lucifer, he had to keep the output at around 40% to keep it running safely at all times. This was because Milim's Wrathful King Satanale was far too powerful. Right now, with the ultimate skill Nodin's God of the Abyss, it was possible to safely operate up to 90%. However, Milim, don't be scared, just do it. If you get out of control again, we'll stop you. Guy had high hopes for Milim, that she could at least control the authority that was born from her own desire with her own will. Milim is not one to not sense this trust. Although he is still afraid of going out of control and is deeply conflicted inside, he is motivated to work hard, knowing that now is the time. Okay, I get it. I'll do my best not to go out of control, but if I fail, I'll leave it to you. Milim steeled her resolve and activated Wrathful King Satanale once again. Milim already possesses a huge amount of magical energy, and her power grows significantly. Seeing this, Veldora thought, if things get out of control, I'm sure we'll get into trouble again. Naturally, Guy's words about us stopping them must have included Veldora in them. And most importantly, if Milim goes out of control again, Rimuru will be furious. Not only was he not the only one at fault, but Veldora was not responsible for this either, and yet, for some reason, he could see a future where he was forced to take full responsibility. Still, I wasn't foolish enough to say it out loud. He understood that since Velzard was there was no way anyone would listen to what he had to say. HMPH, I've even acquired the ability to see into the future. Even though Veldora tried to act tough, he couldn't shake off the sadness he felt. With all this in mind, Guy and the others regrouped. Velgrind has left, but the 4 strongest people remain. Milim's power is also increasing, and the battle is still to come. Guy, Velzard, Milim, and Veldora re-energized. However, something seemed strange about Ivalage. He stood motionless, his eyes fixed on the other side of the collapsed wall of Tensukaku. Guy and the others were lucky that they weren't pursued, but now it felt ominous. What was he looking at? Guy followed Ivarage's gaze. There, Veldonava had descended from the sky and landed on the ground. He didn't care about friend or foe, and completely ignored the holy purification barrier. The one who was dealing with Veldonava was Rimuru, who was fighting with such intensity that no one around him could get close, and he was putting up an incredibly fierce battle. My other half. Muttering this, Ivalage floated lightly into the air. Immediately afterwards, it begins to fly. Just so you don't even notice us. Yeah, you're licking it. It's humiliating. I'll unleash my wrath on you. That's true. If we get in Rimuru's way, he'll probably say something mean to us. So let's quickly chase after him and stop him. And so, Guy and the others set off in pursuit of Ivalage. Here, to the east, the area had been reduced to a wasteland by the Ivalage attack. Nicholas, who is part of the holy purification barrier, has been exposed to dangerous attacks many times, but thanks to everyone's desperate efforts to protect him, he is safe. Arnaud, who was in charge of the upper part of the sky, also endured the force by clinging to the Tensukkaku. It seems like they're trying to hide their presence and not stand out as much as possible. That can't be helped. If they were to get caught up in such fierce fighting, they would have no time to maintain the barrier. Even though he was in a situation where he couldn't escape, he ended up getting caught up in the aftermath of the battle between Veldonava and me. I was doing my best to avoid any casualties, but this was something that was beyond my control. That's how devastating the damage caused to the surrounding area by the sword fight between Veldonava and me was. The energy contained in the swords is so tremendous that a shock wave is released the moment they clash. Or rather, it's an explosion. A more appropriate expression would be that the atmosphere explodes. Even if heat rays are not emitted, large-scale destruction will occur. As expected, it's too dangerous, so I choose to avoid it rather than block it with my sword. However, that is a problem in itself. Veldonava's sword strokes were so sharp that it was impossible to dodge them. After seeing them, the multiple barriers that had been cast with all their might were shattered with just one blow. However, without them, the damage would be so great that they had to be recast every time they were destroyed. My future attack prediction is also unreliable. Veldonava was just too fast. However, an unexpected savior appeared. Rimuru-san moved to the right. It was a thought transmission from Chloe. Without any hesitation or doubt, I follow his instructions. Naturally, the result was a brilliant and successful evasion. Ahem. Veldonava had a suspicious look on his face, but it was nothing he knew. I maintained a calm expression, taking the attitude that it's all down to my own ability. Veldonava launched a fierce attack, but with advice from Chloe, they were able to deal with it safely and securely. Because there is enough room, it is easy to deflect attacks with a sword. If it were to be received head-on, a shock wave would be generated, but if it was oriented to deflect it, there would be no unnecessary energy exploding. It's amazing. I hope they can keep it up and shut out the opponent without any problems. That's what I thought, but it seems that was too naive. Well, that's the usual thing. You can't just think about taking it easy or anything like that. The first thing that was unexpected was that immediately after a loud roar rang out. On the battlefield, several floors above ground of Tensukkaku collapsed. Arnaud was so startled that he nearly fell off the outer wall. If he had been a little lower, he might have been caught up in the collapse and the holy purification. Barrier, holy field might have been deactivated. In that sense, it wasn't the worst. Yet, in fact, he was safe, so it could be said that he was just barely lucky. Even so, I know how sturdy Tensukkaku is from my own experience. If it were to collapse, it would undoubtedly be a terrible event. It was unclear what had happened, but there was no time to worry about it. A beautiful woman jumped out from where the building had collapsed. It was Ivalage, who had taken the form of Milim's mother, Lucia, and was heading towards us. Is he targeting me, or Veldonava? It seems it was Veldonava, but this is the worst. I thought it was safe as long as it wasn't me, but then Chloe made an ominous statement. In fact, it seems like a confirmed future event, so it's far from being ominous. If you prepare yourself for what's going to happen, the answer will soon become clear. Kayaha, you're mine. Veldonava stabbed Ivarage in the chest as he shouted like that. He then swung his sword down, pinning him to the ground. The sword, which contained an immense amount of energy comparable to that of a true dragon, stopped Ivarage's movements. I was stunned, but then I realized that it was something different from an attack. I see, that sword called memory, seems to have the effect of implanting past memories into the target. In this case, memories are being transplanted into evil age. Those memories are you. Are you planning to implant Lucia's memories into evil age? Before I could point it out, Guy, who had followed evil age, interjected. I had heard the answer and already knew it, but it seemed Guy had also deduced it just by looking at the current situation, and at this point, he must have guessed Veldonava's objective as well. I thought it would be impossible to recreate evil age as Lucia, no matter how you look at it. Huh, maybe you couldn't bring the dead back to life, so you're trying to create them again. Yeah, apparently, he plans to destroy this world in order to collect all of the information children scattered throughout the world. That's unreasonable. I knew he was an idiot, but he's still that stupid even after coming back to life. Guy said harshly. True dragons aren't just selfish, they're also full of idiots and so on, he continued to complain. Velzard and Veldora, who arrived late, also had sour expressions on their faces. That's so bad. I'm clever, but as a relative, I'm a disgrace. No, I think Milim is the most selfish one. You're with me. Guy asserted it, without me having to point it out. The reason I didn't say anything was because I was wondering who was being selfish, Veldora or me. Since they're both the same, Guy's statement is correct. I nodded vigorously and showed my agreement. Now, Iverage is unable to move. Perhaps because information was flowing in from memory, all strength had left his entire body, and he was motionless. It is unclear what will happen after his return, but it will likely take some time. In that case, it would be best to stop Veldonava before evil age returns. Let's all take on the challenge now. That's what I suggested. Hearing this, Veldonava smiled. Oh dear. Are they all planning to turn against me? That statement froze the atmosphere. Even Guy was nervous, but he instantly changed his mind and showed his resolve. Well, I guess there's no other way. It's my duty as a friend to stop you. Following this, Velzard smiled. That's true. Guy taught me that simply following orders isn't enough. I won't make any mistakes again. Velzard seemed to regret that her methods hadn't been able to heal her brothers. Loneliness. The senses of a true dragon were of, so she couldn't be at ease. But she shouldn't be doing anything crazy again. From the beginning until now, Veldora has never wavered in his actions. I believe in Rimuru, and it remains reliable. Incidentally, she doesn't seem to be as scared of her older brother as she is of her older sisters. This may also be due to the difference in their feelings towards each other. Milim has also made her hostile intentions towards Veldonava clear. That's too selfish. I too want my loved ones to come back to life, but sacrificing others for that purpose is something I find hard to understand. Milim's statement was a very reasonable one. But however, even though his daughter had admonished him, it did not resonate with Veldonava. Though he had a sad expression on his face, he spoke only with his own feelings in mind. There's no need to eliminate everyone. At the very least, there's no possibility that the people who were alive before Lucia died have any fragments of her mixed in. It's okay to overlook them. In other words, if it was just Guy and the others present, he would take them to the new world that Veldonava would create. However, no one agrees with this. Velzard in particular asked Veldonava with an angry expression on her face. Brother, you gave me some time, right? You promised me that you would take those I froze to the next world, right? Was that a lie? From Velzard's words, it was inferred that she had intended to freeze not only Milim's subordinates but many more people as well, and that was precisely Velzard's kindness in trying to reduce the number of casualties. It makes me think that if only I had done the reporting, contacting, and consulting spinach properly, but since that's already over, I'll use it for the next time. More importantly, Veldonava's answer to that question was important. Well, it's pretty predictable to some extent. If Lucia had been resurrected safely, I wouldn't have killed her. That means that if there was anyone who possessed a fragment of the factors that made up Lucia, he intended to annihilate them without mercy and retrieve the information child. As was the case with Feldway, I wonder why people resort to such reckless behavior. Your brother is broken. Is that so? That's right, so I will also fight with all my might. Velzard was the person closest to Veldonava, and so Velzard declared that she was no longer a relative. Hearing that, I also have mixed feelings. If you've been told this much, can't you reflect on yourself a little? That's what I hoped, but Veldonava remained unwavering in a bad way. That's a shame. Veldonava shrugged his shoulders. The sad expression he had shown earlier had disappeared in an instant. Maybe it really is broken. He probably doesn't really have any interest in anything other than Lucia. The atmosphere was becoming increasingly dangerous. I'm not the only one who feels this way. Tension is visible on everyone's faces. It seemed that a fight was unavoidable. Now, your name is Rimuru. The reason you were able to oppose me was because you were being advised by someone hiding there, right? But those tricks are over now. Veldonava expressionlessly snapped his fingers, and space split open, causing Chloe to roll out. Her whole body was covered in cuts, and there was a large gash.